have State Controller Malia Cohen, who was elected in November 2022. She has a long history of public service and being a servant leader in the state of California, and especially in the Bay Area. She was a board president for the county supervisors. So her accolades and accomplishments are very long. I encourage all of you to take a moment to read that. You're an inspiration to many of us, especially us women, as to what we can do and accomplish. But I'm going to give you a really sort of a question that I think I've been getting a lot, and which is, what does a state controller do as a CFO of the fourth largest economy in the globe, in the world? What is it that you really do?
That is such a loaded question.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me just say good morning.
Good morning.
It's so wonderful to be here, to see so many leaders from San Benito, from Monterey, which one? Oh, yes, and Santa Cruz. It's great to be here. I'm your neighbor. I just came up from San Francisco just this morning. I'm excited to have a conversation with you. The state controller is a constitutional office, which means that the duties and functions are spelled out in the California state constitution. The governor is a state constitutional officer, lieutenant governor. You have the secretary of state, you have the controller, you have the treasurer, and the superintendent of public instruction. You also have constitutional officers that make up the State Board of Equalization. So all of us collectively are your constitutional officers. As you heard in the bio, thank you very much. I was elected in 2022. I have succeeded Betty Yee. You might all remember Betty Yee. She's pretty popular. Betty Yee, before Betty Yee was a gentleman named John Chung. You all remember John Chung. So, the state controller, wow, where do I begin? Okay, so let me start at the top. I'm like your fiscal go-to person. Okay, I am going to take really complex terminologies and probably distill it down to everyday, digestible language, okay? So the first thing I like to talk about is the distinction between a controller and a treasurer, okay? Now, do we have any accountants in the space? One, great. Well, she already is head and shoulders above all of you all. Okay, so when we're talking about accounting, you have accounts receivable. That's money that comes in. That's the state controller. All right. Oh, no, excuse me. That's the treasurer. The treasurer is responsible for money that comes into the state of California. She's the state's banker. She has deep relationships with banking institutions. She's really in charge of making sure that our state has a high bond rating, which we then sell to make money for roads and bridges and everything. Now, the state controller is on the opposite side of the ledger. She is responsible for the money that goes out. Okay, so money comes into the state and money goes out, just like money comes into your house, money goes out. Anybody write the checks and pay the bills of the house? Today's the first of the month. Okay, I was paying my mortgage this morning too. So that is what the controller does. I'm responsible for the disbursement and the payment. So paying state employees, state retirees, reimbursement checks. My signature is on those of you that filed state income tax. I chair the Franchise Tax Board. I'm on the State Lands Commission. I'm on the Coastal Commission. So there's an element of environmental stewardship. So my job is to look through the state's resources, finances, and be a fiduciary, making sure that we're spending the money wisely. If there are any waste, we go after them. We proactively and actively prosecute those that are stealing your tax dollars. One of the key functions of the job has to do with auditing, surveying, making sure that the tax dollars that are available to the legislature, to everyone, it's transparent, so that you can think of me as the accountant for the state of California. And I'm paying the bills, and I'm getting the job done. I'm managing the cash report, a monthly cash report that we put out on a monthly basis, just to let you know where our standings are. So this conversation is really going to go in depth about the fiscal health of the state of California. I hope to have enough time to take any kind of questions that you may have that may arise. No question is too big or too small, so let's go ahead and dive in.
Excellent.
Oh, wait, I actually have some facts I should probably give. Since I am the controller, let me talk numbers. Okay.
There we go.
So we administer also a $14 billion program called Unclaimed Property. You guys familiar with Unclaimed Property? That is a program that states are required, institutions that do work that have business in the state of California is required when you lose your money, they are required to turn it over to the state of California. And we are the custodian of that. We hold that. And so right now we are holding not just money, but we also hold gold coins, gold bars, silver, china, heirlooms, you name it, anything that has an assessed value. And the total amount that we have in our custody is about $14 billion. So I encourage everyone to go to California, to the SCO's, the State Controller's website, and go to the unclaimed property tab and see if there's any money for you. It's a fun party game I like to play. There inevitably, statistically speaking, is someone in this room, at least probably about 3 people that have money at the unclaimed property. Cameraman, right? I mean, the man in the back already raised his hand. I'm telling you, it's fun. So maybe at the end you can check throughout the conversation and then check to see if there's any.
Yeah, by the end of the day, we should see how many folks had unclaimed property.
Yes, I
That's a good
know.
one.
I was just in, where was I? I was in Newport Beach on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember. Today's Thursday. Tuesday. And gave out $2.6 million in unclaimed property to different counties. Absolutely. Every county in this state had unclaimed property, and LA County, being the largest, had an enormous amount of money. So it was so much fun just to fly down there and just give out money. I felt like Oprah. You get a check, you get a check, you get a check. So you have to keep my winning streak strong. Okay, so check it out. We disperse $679 billion through annually just in payments. That's how much we're paying. On a monthly basis, the state of California's payroll is, get this, $27.4 billion. Yes, we are paying approximately 658,000 people on time, by the way. Our checks are never late, okay? We do a lot of audits. We actually audit in the last 10 years and have identified $8.1 billion in fraud. So that is just a taste about the State Controller's Office. It's about 1,500 employees. We're spread out all across the state of California. I want to recognize Hasib Emran, who is a deputy controller. He represents me on the State Board of Equalization, which is of the 70 boards and commissions, the State Board of Equalization is just one that I sit on, but it is in charge of property taxes. Okay, that was a really long introduction. How am I doing? Are you guys still with me? You're paying attention? Okay, all right.
Love it. Thank you so much. So this morning we've been talking about, the whiplash from the market, the tariffs, the economic uncertainty, and yet, just last week it came out that we're the 4th largest economy in the world. So how do we reconcile that? How would you describe the fiscal health, and especially with the preliminary tax returns for this year and then future years out with the economic sort of policies coming down from the feds?
So the state of California, there's good news and bad news, okay? I'm gonna start with the good. Always start with the good. It's probably, the state probably mirrors maybe a little bit of what your own personal finances are looking like, right? Yeah, you're making it. You have enough to cover your bills. The state of California has enough in the rainy day fund to cover her bills for the next year. But that's not to say that we don't have a structural deficit. I know that whenever Amazon Day or Prime comes around, I have a problem. I like to spend more than I have coming in. But the state of California has a similar problem that the legislature is going to have to address a structural deficit, meaning that we have more bills and expenses, committed expenses, than we have revenue that are coming in. So at the end of the first quarter of this month, we had more than $4 billion in estimates. What does that mean? That means that the governor's office, Department of Finance, has said, hey, we are going to be at this point with our cash flow. And according to my department's accounting, we are $4 billion ahead. So that is a very good thing. That means that our cash flow is more positive than what the governor projected. However, my little contrarian mind is like, I think the governor always puts out not friendly numbers, so that in the end he can come back and be like, hey, I saved the day, yay. Look at me, okay? Look at me, I saved the day, I saved the state, or I did cost, I won't even start about all the gymnastics. The accountants in this room know what I'm talking about. So don't be fooled, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, we're not bad. but we're not in a good place, okay? The primary driver of the revenue strength for the state of California is personal income tax. People need to be working. If you are a working person and you're paying your taxes, thank you very much. I appreciate you, because that has allowed us to be $3.5 billion above the budget estimates, okay? So this is just by the end of coming in. These numbers are coming in from the end of March. I don't have the second quarter numbers just yet. And then additionally, we have very healthy reserves. You remember Governor Jerry Brown? And all of his infinite wisdom. He did a lot of crazy things. He did a lot of great things, one of which was setting up that rainy day fund. We should be thanking him for that, because that means that we have a healthy reserve of over $20 billion. And that is why we are in a good, healthy position. So when you think about your own finances in your house, if you have that emergency fund that you're not supposed to touch, and it continues to grow, that means that you're in a good place. I did not come to lecture about personal finance, but bring me back if you want me to. I have thoughts and feelings about that if you want me to talk about personal finance. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about the bad news, or the areas of concern, as my staff has put it. They say, don't call it bad, call it areas of concerns. I don't want you to stay up at night worrying about it, but I definitely want you to be aware. You are seeing the fluctuations of the volatility of the market, right? You might even see your own personal portfolios riding the highs and the lows. When we are looking towards 25-26 budget, and then we're looking at beyond, I mentioned that there was a structural deficit. The Legislative Analyst Office has warned that California faces this budget problem, resulting in a multi-billion-dollar deficit over the next 5 years. Okay, but keep in mind, we still got that $20 billion in our back pocket, right? Okay. Now, federal funding. Are you guys watching what President Trump is doing now? This is a nonpartisan conversation, okay? So to the Republicans in this room, don't get mad. Please don't send me hate mail. I'm not disparaging you. I'm just letting you know what the president is doing and how it is impacting us in our state. The recent actions of closing the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, you think about restricting research dollars to institutions, all of that has an impact on this region, on the entire state of California. This is alarming and concerning. I hope that it will. I hope he eliminates this policy, because it is having an impact on us. It's going to have an impact on our labor force, by the way, and increasing immigration enforcement. It's likely to constrain our labor availability, especially in many sectors, like right here in the Monterey Bay area. Unemployment insurance debt. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but we racked this up back during the during COVID time. That is to the tune of $20 billion. So we have a considerable amount of debt that we also are responsible to pay the federal government. So moreover, the governor's projected budget that he laid out in January did not take into account the tariff war, and how that is going to have an impact on California, because California is the #1 importer of imports from China. And then also the wildfires. And then not to mention the smaller fires that are happening regionally. But the wildfires led to a $40 billion request of federal relief. So that is just a high-level snapshot of where we are. Again, I don't want you to walk away thinking doom and gloom, but I do want you to be very sober and clear-eyed and understanding exactly where the state of California is. This trade conflict definitely poses a lot of risk to many of the small businesses in this area, as well as to employers. You want me to go on?
Sure.
Okay. The tariff war is disruptive, and it's kind of have a multiplier domino effect. The country's 10 largest ports, 3 of them are in California. And if people are not importing and exporting, which there's been already a reduction, that has an impact on, you think about the Teamsters that are driving the trucks, you think about the longshoremen that are taking the cargo off of the vessels, bringing them on, and all of the hands that are touching this. That is what is having an impact on particularly Long Beach and LA, which regionally, the Oakland port has also been adversely affected. Okay.
No,
Next
thank you.
question.
Thank you. Wow. There's so much to take in. All that to say, how do we prepare ourselves as a state and then as regions? Like, what do you advise? And I think part of this, I know you were saying, like, let's not talk about our personal finances, but it's very much akin to that. Like, it's one thing to have the rainy day reserve, but we can't be complacent that will always be there. So what is your advice both for the region, our Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Benito, Tri-County region? What should we expect and what is the state kind of planning for? So that's kind of top of mind for me, given like what you just outlined. Oakland is already facing that. How do we pivot?
Yeah, have you heard the expression, we're building the plane as we're flying it? That is what we're doing. So while California's overall fiscal health shows encouraging signs, right? We've got the cash reserve. We've got people paying their personal income tax. We have property tax, which has also grown. Property tax is a stabilized tax, not subject to really market fluctuations and to people's employment. But I think for the Monterey Bay area, it means having laser focus on economic resiliency. I would start thinking about austerity measures, what we can start to put in place, just cost cutting. Maybe instead of going out every week, you're going out maybe a couple times a month. That's just in your own personal house. For the state of California, we need to be paying attention to our economic resiliency. We need to be paying attention to climate risk, because when you have fires, that leads to floods when the rain seasons come. I know this area knows a lot about that. We need to talk about protecting key industries like our agriculture in this region, tourism, and education. We've got major institutions in this area. How Monterey and the surrounding counties can begin to prepare. I would say diversify your regional economy. Start to think about not only ways to reinforce and support the agricultural community, but also how do you begin to expand it? How do you begin to protect tourism so that it remains vital to the region? I would start to look at investing in the blue economy. Are you familiar with the blue economy? Yes, of course. The economists and the folks, the ecologists in the room. So for those of you that don't know, the blue economy is economies that are related to oceans or the body of water. Right? Marine research, aquaculture, ocean technology, begin to start to think about critical ways to expand that. Green job creation is also an area that we can expand in that I think is relevant to this area. Environmental remediation. And then also paying attention to the small and micro businesses, particularly in minority communities. Do not dismiss them, do not write them off, and support them. So buying and shopping locally whenever possible. I think we need to strengthen our emergency infrastructure so that we as a region remain resilient. When you think about Monterey, San Benito, Santa Cruz, investing in regional hazard planning, making sure that we're sharing information, best practices, lessons learned, and then, if at all possible, this one is one of my favorite ones, modernizing infrastructure, right? Just maybe it's your technology, maybe it's how you're warehousing data, just being aware that we're in the 21st century. Attacks to our economy are not just physical attacks like the 50s and the 60s when you think of post-World War, World War II, but also think about data hacks and how disruptive that would be if our electric grid were to be disrupted, or the water table here in that region were to be bombed. I know this is really early in the morning, and I'm trying to be a ray of sunshine. But I want you to, again, I really want you to understand the seriousness.
Yeah, there is serious.
And you want to know what I think about at night? That's what I'm thinking about. When I'm up, I'm thinking about how we are protecting our data, our personal information. I chair the franchise tax board, so that's where all of your business and your personal information is housed.
No, it's very helpful. And I think it's important to also be realistic of those threats and to be mindful of that. We have county administrators, actually that's the next panel after this, and how are the counties also looking to be resilient, and we have also institutions of higher education who will be talking shortly as well. I know you're not trying to, it's not the gloom and doom, but it's also about how can we build, how can we be resilient, and how can we protect. The great news is, in addition to our hospitality and tourism, our ag and healthcare, we do have pathways that we're looking to grow into, like blue economy, ag tech space, and we have advanced air mobility around precision manufacturing, advanced business services that we need to do better, I think, telling the tale of. All that to say, I really appreciate it. I'm looking at this clock ticking down, and I want to be able to give at least 2 or 3 folks the opportunity to ask our controller a question.
2, 3 part? So the first one is, I know about 30% of our budget comes from the federal government. How are you repurposing what you currently have to kind of mitigate that loss that we're going to be encountering, number one? Number two, the governor of Maine, amazing lady, she told the administration, not on my watch, are you able to hold back and say that extra $83 billion that California, because we send more to the federal government than we take, that extra almost 90 billion, can you hold back and say, you know what, we're not sending you any money because you did not, when we had floods or fires or whatever, we did not get funding from FEMA, to take care of the problems that happened here. Are you able to say we're going to withhold funding from the federal government? Is that something possible, number one?
Well, yes, anything is possible. Absolutely, anything is possible. Well, first of all, let me say this. We have an ambitious governor. So he's going to play ambitiously. So he's thinking about his future. And I do not see him saying no to the federal government. I see him taking a more nuanced position. Now, this is my own opinion. These are my observations. This is like what I've seen and experienced in the last 15, almost 16 years of being in elected office. Forget about the number of years I spent as a staffer. So you talked about the 30% of the statewide budget. My role is to account for the dollars. I do not allocate where and that money goes. That is a discussion between the governor and the legislature. And so they're the ones that are going to have to determine where the cuts are going to be, who's going to experience the cuts, right? Now, generally speaking, the legislature and the governor have the last several years seen eye to eye. You'll see minimal cuts in senior services, maybe school lunches, after school programs. You'll see very little cuts to, if probably none, to early childhood education. You will see the governor will give budget instructions saying, I do not want to, will not be funding one-off programs. Right? So if you're not already receiving state dollars, you're most likely not going to receive any in this budget cycle. Okay? So that is just me kind of looking into the crystal ball about the 30% statewide budget, I assume you're talking about. Now, you're talking about the governor of Maine. Now, tiny little Maine versus big California, okay? It is easy for, I think, Maine to say no. And to stand up. I think, going back to my earlier point, it's a more nuanced when we're talking about the state of California. We're talking about now the 4th largest economy in the world. So there are a lot of irons in the stove. There are a lot of players. There are a lot of buttons that need to push. There's labor. There's the immigration issues. We have housing crisis. We have homeless. We have a lot of things. So I don't necessarily see Governor Newsom being bold as the governor of Maine. Perhaps in his dreams. But in reality, come on, stay with me. In reality.
We're with you.
You with me?
We're
Okay.
with you.
But in reality, it's a more nuanced position because we have a lot of lives at stake. We have a lot to lose. But you are right. The state of California gives the most back to the federal government. And I know that the governor has flirted with the idea of withholding a portion of it, and he may actually do that. But that, again, resides in his ability. But I want to really emphasize that sometimes when you're in elected office, ambition can, you're making decisions through your ambitious lens. Real talk, okay? Do not go back and tell the governor that I was talking about him. In Monterey.
The speaker's
Do not
office
do
in
that.
here.
But you want to know the truth. I am the state controller. I am above the partisan politics, right? I represent Republicans, I represent independents, and I represent Democrats. My job is to focus and to follow on the money. And I'm just telling you from the lens that I'm looking at where and how the money is flowing and where it's moving.
Thank you.
Okay, this man has a question over here. And then this cowgirl has a question. I want to hear from her.
We really appreciate your honesty. And yes,
I know.
there's
Please
some
do
elected
not tweet
offices in
this
No.
and-
I don't think it's on.
Good Lord, they'll
It's on.
never let me out again.
Thanks.
It
Thank you.
seems like the last time I work with you all.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for your straight talk. It's a lot of fun too. So you mentioned the ports.
Yes.
Okay. We have the largest ports in the country. We import like 40% of all imports in the United States come through California. They go other places, but it comes into California. Huge trucking and infrastructure and Teamsters and dock workers and everything. With 147% tariffs or 124% or whatever they end up being, trade with China is, going to pretty much stop for a while at least until Trump cuts a deal. So that's a lot of employment, particularly in Southern California, but it's a lot of import and export companies in agriculture, manufacturing, et cetera, in California. So are you thinking about, or is the governor thinking about, what we're going to do to offset this potentially huge shock to our economy?
Okay, stop asking me questions about the governor, okay? Because I am not in his head. He's not asking me for my opinions, although he should. I have a few that might help guide him. I don't really know. I don't know how the governor is addressing this, okay? But I can tell you a little bit more on how the ports are addressing and what the ports are doing and thinking. They are nervous, and they are. I spoke to them maybe about a month ago, from all the port directors in the state of California, and they are in the process of re-envisioning themselves. So I don't know what that's going to look like for Long Beach. Long Beach is one of the largest ports with an enormous amount of traffic to the Pacific Rim. And they're the ones that are between Long Beach and Los Angeles that are most wounded by this work stoppage. And it impacts the small businesses that are even around. I talked a little bit about the multiplier effect, right? And that domino effect. You think about the businesses, the luxuries, the people that are catering, all of that is impacted. There has not been an overall strategy that has been presented yet. I know that the Port of Oakland is carrying some legislation that they're looking to begin to re-envision what their spot is going to look like. They're trying to have a grocery store. They're trying to, they tried to keep the A's, but that didn't happen. But have a ballpark. They're looking to develop housing on port property. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that are at play, but all of which still are impacted by the tariffs. When you think about the cost of steel, when you think about the supplies, when you think about just everything that is being imported into the state of California. Now, the president is saying that it's going to cause a little pain up front, but hold on, and American businesses are going to kick into gear, and then we'll be able to get most of our supplies, American made. But there are other economists that project that American-made goods are going to be subject to exorbitant costs that, which is the reason why people import things overseas, because the cost of production is just a more narrow margin. They're able to make more, manufacturers are able to make more money. So all that to say is I'm not in the governor's head. He didn't ask me, so I don't know.
We're going to take one last question.
To her.
Oh, that's right. There she is. Last question, and then we really apologize. We could go on.
We could go on if you
Yeah,
want
this is
me
really
to.
lovely. Yeah, thanks.
Or, you know, you can invite me next year and give me an hour.
We'll definitely give you an hour.
So my question goes along with the ports and also the blue economy.
Okay.
I've been commercial fishing this bay for 8 years, and I'm also an equestrian tour guide for the coast in Moss Landing.
The hat gave it away.
Thank you.
You look good.
We have been severely impacted by the Bess fire in Moss Landing. And the cost of Bess and the infrastructure for Bess and the offshore wind farms going along with that is going to be extremely expensive to California, with nearly 100% failure rate, with a fire almost every single year in every Bess facility in California and the recycling facilities and throughout the rest of the nation and beyond into the world. So we really need to reconsider how we want to invest that money. I also think, as a commercial fisherman, that we are sitting on top of an amazing, sustainable fishery that at one point was a world capital, including questions about reopening the abalone. Now, if we turn our ports into a place where commercial fishing thrives and we invest in infrastructure of the coast, like the tourism, like equestrian rides, like whale watching, and instead focus on a blue economy of preserving our oceans from contaminants of heavy metals and unknown acids and forever chemicals, and instead invest in a blue economy, invest in our fishermen, turn our ports into world exports of sustainable fisheries. There's a lot of money in California to be made there and a lot of people willing to get on board, and we should invest in our commercial fishermen to turn our economy around, and China would be buying fish from us. Fresh.
This woman needs to be elected into office. She has a vision. I love the plan that you've laid out there. I think it's doable on a regional level, getting the right people, I think there's bankers in this room to begin to underwrite some of the proposals that you've laid out there. The thing that I want you to also be aware of is that the state of California has a cantankerous relationship with the White House at this time, right? We're looked down upon. They're looking to cut funding left and right. We are hammered for being a sanctuary state. So it makes doing business and creating, expanding new industries difficult to receive federal dollars. Yes?
That being said, regardless of bipartisan perspective,
Yes.
Trump is willing to invest and prioritize the fishing of the United States.
Well, then if that were the case, then we need to get this in front of him and start to think about it. So when I'm thinking about, the different positions that where you are you the lone woman in this thought, or is the chamber behind you? Is there a fishery industry that is also, because earlier in my remarks I talked about expanding new economies and developing new economies, and I think you are on the right path in that blue economy, because that is the future. You talked about wind. The state of California had some wind turbine placement plans further north, near more Del Norte part of California, but those have also been placed on hold because the federal dollars aren't there to support that initiative.
So as I mentioned, we could go on, but the time is finite. We're cutting into the next panel. Please join me in warmly thanking the state controller for
very
being
much.
here. Thank you so much. This was lovely. We will definitely be bringing her back for an hour.